This is a brief introduction to propositions. Now, the statements or claims that are used in an argument, i.e. the premises and the conclusion, are called propositions. Now, the important aspect or the key property of a proposition is simply that a proposition can be either true or false, and not both. So propositions are the claims that are being expressed in an argument, and they are the things that are either true or false. And propositions are expressed by declarative sentences. Now, what's a declarative sentence? A sentence is declarative if it makes a statement. That is, if it actually asserts something. So, for example, Amsterdam is in the Netherlands. This is a sentence, and it's asserting that the city of Amsterdam is actually in the country of the Netherlands. So this declarative sentence asserts a proposition. Another example, textbooks are free in all of my courses. Now notice this used this word my. So textbooks are free in all of my courses. So sometimes declarative sentences, whether or not a declarative sentence is asserting something true or asserting something false, depends on who is actually uttering the sentence. So for example, for me, it is true, at least this semester, that textbooks are free in all of my courses. So this is asserting a true statement. For other people, another professor or maybe me at a different moment in time, it may not actually be the case that textbooks are free in all of my courses. These expressions like my, I, my computer, and yesterday, these are called indexicals. So when a sentence contains an indexical, the truth or falsity of the sentence depends on who is uttering the sentence. But for the purposes of this course and these notes, it's perfectly fine to work with declarative sentences that have indexicals in them. Of course, you do need to fix some underlying context so you know whether or not what statement is being claimed by the declarative sentence is either true or false. That is, you need to know who is uttering these sentences. Now here are a couple things about the relationship between propositions and sentences. So first of all, many sentences can express the same proposition. And this is a very familiar phenomenon. There's often many ways to say the same thing. So for example, these three declarative sentences, I have taken logic before, I took logic, this is not the first time I have taken logic, they all make the same claim. They all are expressing the same proposition. But there are three different ways. It's important to recognize that these are three different declarative sentences that are making the same claim. Another type of example would be using different languages. So there is a cat in the teapot. That's a sentence in English. It makes a claim. And these two sentences right here, written in Spanish and Dutch, they also make the same claim. They express the same proposition. They are just written in different languages. So many sentences can express the same proposition. We also could have the phenomenon that a single sentence might express many different propositions. And this is another familiar phenomenon. This is the phenomenon of ambiguity. So sometimes in natural language, in English especially, there are sentences that have ambiguous meanings. It's not clear what the meaning actually is. So for example, we saw the man with the telescope. There are at least two meanings, two statements that could be expressed by this declarative sentence. It could be either using a telescope, we saw the man, maybe off in the distance, or second, we saw a man who was actually holding the telescope. So it was the man that was actually holding the telescope. These are two different claims, two different statements, and they're both expressed by this single sentence, we saw the man with the telescope. So this sentence, this declarative sentence, is ambiguous. It won't be clear unless you specify in the context or you're a little bit more precise about whether or not which of these two claims or statements is expressed by this declarative sentence. Here's another example. No student solved exactly two problems. So you might want to pause the video and see if you could think to yourself, what are the two readings you can get out of this single sentence? So here are the two readings. First, there was no student who solved exactly two problems. So you look out at all the students in your class and you ask, did you solve exactly two problems? And every student says no. So there was no student that solved exactly two problems. It could also mean that there were exactly two problems that no student solved. So there are two very, very difficult problems, and none of the students were able to solve those two problems. So again, here we have an example of a single sentence, no student solved exactly two problems, that is ambiguous. It could express either this first proposition or it could express this second proposition. So these are some important aspects of the relationship between declarative sentences on the one hand and propositions on the other hand. So the important thing for you to remember is that a declarative sentence expresses a proposition, and the components of an argument, we take the components of an argument, the premises and the conclusion, to be propositions, the type of things that are either true or false. And we will generally be assuming that each statement in a proposition, each of the premises and each of the conclusion, it may be clear in the context whether or not it's true or false.